Hello, and welcome to Region Locked. Japan has a large quantity of platformers that never left the region, but typically these games were made during the 8 and 16-bit eras. 2D platformers became less common after the PlayStation's release, as games tried making use of the console's 3D capabilities. One 2D platformer America never received was Chippoke Ralph No Daibouken, otherwise known as The Adventure of Little Ralph. The Adventure of Little Ralph was released for the PlayStation in 1999 and was developed by New Corporation, a team with few projects to its name. The title's gameplay and style are reminiscent of the arcade era of platformers, and people often think that the game is an arcade port. However, Little Ralph was created exclusively for the PlayStation. The game follows Ralph, an 18-year-old orphan. When his village is attacked by a demon army known as the Lost Clan, Ralph tries to defend it. However, he comes up against the leader of the clan, the powerful Valgo, a demon obsessed with his muscles. Valgo casts a spell that strips Ralph of his gear and turns him into a child. Before Valgo manages to throw the finishing blow, Ralph's childhood friend Letitia shows up to protect him, unleashing a powerful magical ability that she's kept hidden for all those years. Letitia saves Ralph, but is instead kidnapped by Valgo. Naked and helpless, Ralph finds a magical holy sword on the battlefield that guides him to save his friends and defeat the Lost Clan. The game works like a typical action platformer, with Ralph being able to run, jump, and swing his sword. Ralph can also pick up a shield that grants him one additional hit before he dies. He can also find power-ups for his sword which widen his range, or cause fireballs to shoot from his sword when he swings. Along the way, Ralph can find a small animal friend, Fierio, that helps him by throwing small explosives. The game uses a score system, and points are gained by collecting fruit or killing enemies. Points can also be multiplied by charging Ralph's sword attack. Ralph will then use it like a bat, knocking enemies in a straight line into one another, and multiplying the points earned. Initially, the game's boss battles must be beaten as young Ralph. About halfway through the game, however, Ralph gains the power to temporarily turn back into an adult during boss battles. When he does this, the boss battles switch genre and become similar to a fighting game. Specifically, the gameplay is close to a classic Street Fighter title, with less concentration on combos and more on performing special attacks. It isn't particularly complex compared to most standalone fighting games, but it offers an interesting twist on the game as it progresses. After completing the game, a new versus mode is unlocked. This allows you to play as Ralph or the bosses against a friend. Other elements expand the replayability too. For example, the player can't get the full ending on the easy difficulty, which features only 5 levels compared to the normal mode's 8. We'll refrain from showing you the true ending for those who wish to play through the game themselves. The Adventure of Little Ralph received a widely positive response, with reviewers finding the 2D graphics and flow admirable for the time of release. Many also felt that it was fairly hard, even on the easiest setting. The game's seamless transition between levels were highly praised. It cleverly hid loading screens by showing an animation of Ralph entering the next stage. The Adventure of Little Ralph began life as a sharp X68000 home computer title. The game only moved to the PlayStation after the X68000 became redundant, and this is likely why the game has a very retro feel. In 1999, video games were moving away from the simplistic 2D platformers, instead opting for flashy 3D graphics and new styles of gameplay. In contrast, Ralph's origins are apparent with its points and lives system. Games released in the late 90s normally forego a score system entirely, and use a save system instead of lives and continues. One interesting feature is found in the game's option menu, where the game's sound mode can be set to PSG, reminiscent of older audio chips instead of the higher quality audio found in PlayStation games. There are a few reasons why Little Ralph never came to the West when it was first published. That being said, there's no official response for which reason is most accurate. As explained before, this game wasn't intended to push the PlayStation's hardware at all, and was instead a throwback to the days of platforming gaming. When Sony was designing the original PlayStation, they were convinced 3D was the future after seeing SEGA's Virtua Fighter in action. This belief shaped not only the PlayStation's hardware, but which games appeared on the platform. In the West, many people wanted to see the latest and greatest in gaming technology, which usually meant the most cutting-edge 3D graphics. Sony shared this mentality, at least in the West, and limited the amount of 2D games that appeared on its platforms. This made it difficult for developers who wanted to localize their 2D games for the Western market. One of these developers is SNK's Yoshihito Koyama, who was the director of the Japan-US relations on many of the 2D SNK titles. In 2004, Koyama told Spong.com, "Sony just isn't interested in 2D games anymore, whatever it might be, and yet many games, as long as they are in 3D, trickle through all the time. It's a crazy situation and we don't believe it reflects the needs of the game consumers." Little Ralph was released in 1999, not too long before Koyama made this statement. It wouldn't be hard to imagine how this mentality would stop a 2D PlayStation game coming to Western shores at the turn of the millennium. To add fuel to the fire, the companies involved in developing and publishing Little Ralph were both very small, and to this date haven't ever had an international release. They would have lacked the power and experience necessary to deal with Sony's stance on 2D. Another reason for the game's lack of localization could be that in 1999, people were eagerly awaiting Sony's next big console, the PlayStation 2. They might have thought that bringing a game from an unknown brand to a dying platform wasn't worth the risk. Curiously, while researching Little Ralph, we discovered its official website is not only presented in Japanese, but also English. This could suggest that the game was intended at one point to be brought to the West, perhaps at the same time as it was distributed online in Japan as a digital download for the Japanese PlayStation Store in 2007. If you enjoyed this video, maybe you'd enjoy our video all about Gone. We'll also be playing Little Ralph live on our new secondary channel here on YouTube, so why not take a look? We'll be uploading videos there soon too, so subscribe to keep up with Daz and myself. My name is Greg, and this has been Region Locked.